Welcome to the Marketing Chief Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Collins. In this bonus episode, we continue our conversation with brand strategist Brian Tipping, partner in the Jakes Group. In this first section, Brian talks about his inspiration for choosing a career in advertising.
And I was in a meeting where the creative director for Chevrolet was talking about a campaign they had done for the Chevy S10. Okay, and at the time I was an S10 owner, so I was really interested in this, and I remember buying the truck, thinking to myself in my mind, I really like this because I was going away on the weekends. I was a young man. I was throwing stuff in the back. I was like, this is kind of a modern day equivalent of a man and his horse, right? And so I'm in this presentation where the guy's walking through the creative strategy, and he brings the creative strategy up on the screen, and the line literally says, modern day equivalent of a man and his horse. So somehow that went from strategy to creative to articulation and expression and sent out, and I caught it.
Yes,
I don't know how I caught it, but I caught it. And what they said in their brain, I said in my brain, and it made me think to myself, I want to do that. It's like when I was in public speaking, I wanted to reach the audience. I wanted to move the audience. I wanted to persuade them or make them laugh or whatever it might be. And somebody had done that. Somebody had decided, that's who I want to talk to. That's what I want to say. And so when it happened, I was like, this is a really cool business to be in. And I was actually going over to the agency side. I don't want to say it was as a favor, but it wasn't meant to be a career at that point. It was meant to be a way for me to grow my experience, to understand what the agency side and how it works, and to help out a good client.
The discussion continues as Brian and I talk about the discipline behind great creative advertising and the discipline of great creative, emotional creative.
Yeah.
We've gotten away from that a lot, I think, generally.
I don't know when wacky became the new creative. Yeah. Right. And I like wacky. I just don't think you can shoehorn it into every brand and say, let's put flying fish and farting cows up on the screen and put our logo over the top of it and say it's good to go.
I'm amazed at I'm amazed at the insurance companies who all follow the same.
Yeah, same playbook, right?
Yeah, and it's not impactful. I can't tell you the difference between the gecko and the emu and the. I mean, you can, but I couldn't tell you the difference in their products. Let's put it that way. I can't tell you why to pick one over the other. They don't do anything for me. There's the one, maybe the one where they said, "Hey, we've been there, we've seen that, we've done that."
Yeah.
There's that, again, can't remember the name of it. Maybe Progressive. I'm not sure. No, it's not Progressive. Anyhow.
It's interesting for me because if you're like I am, my kids and my wife get mad at me because I talk to the TV. It's
you too, huh?
I'm not saying that the industry is in a bad place. I'm saying that I've never liked bad advertising or gimmicky advertising or inauthentic advertising. I think there's better answers. Mm-hmm. I think as a marketing and brand professional, when I see stuff that is kind of not thought out or doesn't make sense or in some ways compromises the brand, it bothers me. It bothers me because I don't understand why they're doing it. I don't understand how somebody could sell that, and it also in some ways gives branding and marketing kind of a little bit of a black eye because we kind of all get swept into that under that blanket of marketing and advertising. So if it's great, then we can claim it, right? And if it's bad, then we have to own it. So it's a little complicated at times.
Should companies take a position on social issues? Brian outlines guardrails for brands to consider. I'd be remiss if I didn't tap into the strategic brand mind of Brian Tipping.
Okay.
You're talking about things that we have here in our country.
Yeah.
Should companies in their marketing address social issues as part of their advertising and brand, or should they stay on the sidelines?
Um, this is by no means a dodge. I think each brand will have to kind of look inward and decide where their heritage, culture, positioning, um, where all those things lie. Okay, because there are brands out there that certainly who were built on the idea that our brand um, is involved and sensitive to and passionate about social issues. Those brands exist, and those brands should not stray from what they've always done, right? If they need to chime in about Patagonia is a great brand. It's a very authentic brand, right? And you kind of know where they stand on things related to the ecological system, the planet. They own it. They commit to it. They've done it forever. So I would expect that if there was a debate or an issue around one of their core beliefs, that they would sound off about it. That they would somehow say, you know what, we've been doing this a long time. It feels odd for us not to do something. There's some huge issues in our country today, right? Um, um, I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think there's a lot of missing information. Um, I don't know if brands are the best spokespeople for social issues. Um, I think that we're a divided country, right? We look at the last election, we were close to 50-50, right? There's a lot of people who are unhappy today and a lot of people who are very happy today.
Right.
But that wasn't, it's not like you're talking 80-20, right? Or 60-40. So anytime you take a position as a brand, whether you should or shouldn't, there's a chance you're isolating some of your most loyal customers who appreciate your positioning and your heritage and your quality and your customer service, and they've been loyal for 15 years, and all of a sudden you say X and they disagree with X and they passionately disagree with X,
Mm-hmm.
and they decide they're not going to work with you anymore. Trust me, if families can be divided over these issues, brands and customers can be divided over these issues.
But also what I heard you say early in your response, and I appreciate you tackling the question, because it's a tough one, and it's one that we all wrestle with. But you said kind of if it's consistent with the brand, and what I read between the lines is if it's authentic to the brand, right? You're not saying brand should be everything to everybody, so don't offend anyone because you might offend some.
Yeah.
Some brands may say, we want this slice of the market and we're gonna stand for X. It could be very liberal, it could be very conservative, it could be whatever, but this is what we stand for and this is who we are and this is what we know. So then it makes sense for us to yes, engage, or no, not engage based on who or what they are. Is that fair?
Yeah, brands are supposed to be beacons, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did some work for a university, Bluffton University, Bluffton College, Bluffton Beavers, and the
what city is that in?
Pardon me?
What city is that in?
In Ohio.
Okay, thank you.
But the nuance here is that they were I believe Mennonite. It's been a while, but their brand kind of skirted that, right? The worry was that if we lean into that too much, we're going to shrink our audience, and the way to win is to expand our audience. And logically, you can say, okay, I can get behind that, but brand-wise, I can't get behind that. because brand is being who you are, what you are, letting people know why you're that, and telling you that um, if this is something that appeals to you, if this is something that you like, if this is something that you would advocate or you can get behind it from a brand perspective, um, come on, right? We know we're not for everyone. We can't be, but that's okay because we know who we are. You know who we are. So come on in if you like us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we shifted our strategy at Bluffton when we leaned into the spiritual side of it. And I may get these numbers a little wrong. Lori Worth would have to come back and straighten me out on this. But I want to say that when we launched the new brand and a new campaign, um, admissions applications fell by maybe 20%. Admissions went up by 12%.
Okay. So,
We were
so
attracting,
applications were down, but you were getting the right people.
right. So I could spout off a more articulate case study if I needed to, but the bottom line is we were true to the brand.
Mm-hmm.
We let people know what we stood for and what we offered. The nice thing about that is you've heard it 100 times. Um, my dad used to say it. Um, Tell the truth. It's easier to remember.
That's right.
It's not necessarily the right thing to do. It's easy to remember. So if you're a brand, tell the truth.
Be
And
authentic.
the hard part about the social thing too, the issues where the brands are weighing in, I think it makes it hard on the the employees or the stewards of that brand because there's a good chance they don't agree with that corporate stance. Half of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do they feel when the brand is saying X and the culture internally is going, I don't agree with that. That's some internal external brand conflict that I think is hard to justify and overcome.
And it all comes back to being authentic and true to the brand, having a strong brand purpose, so that if you have a strong brand purpose, the people that you're attracting as employees, they're behind the brand.
Yeah.
So if you do those things, I think of Ben and Jerry's as a,
Yep.
yeah, they're great ice cream,
Yep.
but
Absolutely.
they have a very specific worldview,
Yep.
and it's not I mean it's reflected in some of their
Everything.
flavors and
Yeah.
their titles, right? And so if you work there, you know what you're getting into. You know that hey, you support that. That's what they do.
Yep.
If they did something that was outside of that brand, conversely, Chick-fil-A has a different brand
Absolutely.
as
Yep.
well, and so you know that going in. I think where the trouble is, and what you're talking about, is for brands that are in the middle, right?
Yeah.
They don't really, they aren't purpose driven in that way,
Yeah.
and then it does kind of make it tough on employees, I think. Brian reflects on his work with the Smithsonian Institution. You worked for Smithsonian Institute for a while.
Did some work for them. Yep.
Yeah.
Lemelson Center. Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that. That was pretty interesting from what I recall.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is um, the Smithsonian is a big brand,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as daily as everyday consumer, you don't know that, right? You don't know that there's a Smithsonian, and then there's the History Museum, but there's other museums, and that within the History Museum is the Lemelson Center, which is the Innovation Museum. You just know it's a Smithsonian, right?
It's
So
one huge complex. It's
it is.
so
But the
fun to
interesting
visit.
thing is that the Smithsonian markets not because they they need revenue, right? They're paid for. They're
Yeah.
they're
You paid
there's
for it.
no
I paid for it.
well, yeah, we
Or
taxpayers pay
Texas.
for it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like when you do work with the Pistons, right? That you're trying to get seats in the door for a certain event or a day or whatever. It's not like you work for Domino's and you're trying to put butts in seats and sell more pie on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually more noble than that. It's more, we want to educate people to what we do so we can draw them in and they can appreciate and take advantage of our resources, these awesome, remarkable
Yes.
resources that exist. Because if we don't tell people, they won't know and they can't come, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I worked specifically on innovations. What I think was interesting about working on Smithsonian is the halo effect that has when you're talking about brand work, right? So I could list out 10 brands that I work for. You just did it. 10 brands that I work for. I've worked for Domino's. I've worked for Lazy Boy. I've worked for Dollywood. I've worked for, whatever those Johnson & Johnson, whatever those brands may be. I've worked for Smithsonian. Oh, tell me about Smithsonian. and I worked with some great people there. It was an awesome project. I hope to work with them again. I'm a big history buff, and I love understanding the culture. And the people I worked with were historians, right? They weren't marketing people. They were people who just, they're there because they love history. They're there because
they love the mission,
the curation of pieces and elements. Excuse my creaky chair. On what and they want to share that. So it isn't about how can we make more revenue, which is a fine goal, right? It's capitalistic. Great, let's make some more money. All right, I can help you. But let's share what we have here with the people. How can we get people to come here and experience what we have to share, because it's important? And that's a different mission, and that's a different approach.
If you like what you hear on the Marketing Chief podcast, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app or YouTube, and give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time on the Marketing Chief podcast.